In the spring of 1953, a 19-year-old in Marion, Ohio, borrowed his brother's Ford, drove a girl he barely knew to a dance at the Odd Fellows Hall, and at the end of the night walked her to her door, took off his hat, shook her hand, and said good night, and did not so much as lean in. She married him the following June. 50 years later, at his funeral, she told the room she had decided on him that first night, on that porch before he had let go of her hand. He was not handsome. He had $4 in his pocket and a borrowed car. What he had was a code, a set of things a man did on a date, pressed into him at the kitchen table by a father who knew exactly the kind of man he was raising. Most of what that boy knew that night, no man alive would dare do today. And the one thing he did on that porch, the reason she chose him over every other boy who ever asked, is number one on this list. He was not unusual. On every front porch and at every church hall dance in America, there was a boy exactly like him, carrying the same handful of rules and using them so plainly he would have been baffled to hear them called charming. He thought he was being raised right. Those rules won wives, kept marriages, and made a poor boy welcome at any father's table in town. Then the 1960s arrived, and we decided that being raised right was the same as being repressed, that a man who did these things was performing, hiding, afraid to just be himself. We threw the whole code out. Not because it stopped working, because we stopped wanting to look like the kind of men who tried. We called it freedom. We have spent 50 years alone in crowded rooms, wondering where it went. Number 19 took less than a second and told a girl's father everything he needed to know before the boy had said a word. Number 13 contradicts every piece of dating advice a young man is handed today, and it is the one women remembered for 30 years. And number 1, the single thing that Marion boy did on that porch, the reason a girl chose him over every other boy in town, cost nothing, took no skill, and is the last thing any man would think to do on a date now. Stay with him. These were not tricks. They were not lines. They were the small, unglamorous ways a man told a woman she was safe with him, and told her father he could be trusted before he had proven a single thing. That is the difference between a boy a woman forgets by Friday and a man she remembers at his funeral 50 years on. Every rule on this list, that boy from Marion lived by heart. Hit that subscribe button and let us count down the 25 charming things 1950s men did on a date that no man would dare today. Number 25. He called at the door. He did not honk from the curb. He parked, walked up, knocked, and met her father with his hat in his hand. A machinist in Toledo taught his son in 1951 that a boy who could not face a girl's father had no business facing the girl. You came inside. You shook the father's hand. You sat through 5 minutes of talk you did not want. The honk from the curb said she was a pickup. The knock said she was a person. Number 24. He brought something for her mother. The flowers were not only for the girl. A smart boy brought a small second thing, a tin of cookies, a bunch of daisies, and handed it to her mother at the door. A grocer's son in Fort Wayne learned in 1952 that you courted the whole house, not just the girl in it. The boy from Marion brought his girl's mother a paper sack of oranges that first night because oranges were dear and his father had said, "You give the good thing away." Charm, the mother, and the girl heard your name spoken kindly all week. Number 23. He opened the car door. He walked around every single time. He opened her door, waited until her coat and her hem were clear, and shut it soft. A foundry man in Gary drilled it into his son in 1953 until the boy's hand found the handle without a thought. It cost 4 seconds on each end of the ride. The open door was a small stage, and on it a boy showed her, before a word was spoken, exactly how he meant to treat her. Number 22. He took the traffic side. On the walk from the car, he moved to the outside, between her and the street, and switched without a word at every crossing. A streetcar man in St. Louis raised his son to it in 1950. The boy from Marion did it on the dark walk from the lot to the hall, and she never noticed until years later, which was exactly the point. Whatever came off that road came through him first. She did not have to ask to be protected. She only had to notice, block by block, that she already had been.
Before we go on, I made something special for you. A guide for men like us who still believe a good name and good manners mean something. It's the lost gentleman's code, the old-fashioned manners American gentlemen once lived by, the kind that make you the man everyone respects, welcome in any room you walk into. But these ways are disappearing fast, and once they're gone for good. I've put together 2 books for you, plus a free bonus. Don't spend another year being the man people overlook. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link below. Go ahead, I'll wait.
Number 21. He stood when she rose, when she left the table and when she came back. His legs moved before his mind did. He stood. A schoolteacher in Columbus told his son in 1954 that no man at his table sat while a woman was on her feet. 2 seconds and a little comfort. To her it said her coming and going changed the room. To every man watching it said the boy had been raised by somebody. Rising was a sentence the body spoke before the mouth could form one. Number 20. He offered his coat. The moment the hall door opened onto the cold, the jacket was already off his shoulders and around hers. No speech, no waiting to be asked. A railman in Altoona did it for his wife for 40 years. The boy from Marion gave up his one good jacket on the porch that first night and drove home in shirt sleeves in April, and did not think it worth mentioning. A girl remembered the boy who saw she was cold before she felt it herself. The coat was only proof he had been watching her the whole time. Number 19. His hat came off every time. Indoors, in the car with her, the second he was introduced to her mother, the hat came off. It took less than a second. A tool and die man in Hamtramck corrected his son with one glance in 1950, and the boy's hand was at the brim before the look was through. Off at the threshold, off when she passed. A father at the window read a boy's whole upbringing in the speed of that hand, everything he needed to know, and not one word yet spoken. The hat was nothing. Taking it off was everything. Number 18, he let her order first. At the table, her choice came before his. He asked what she would like, told the waiter, and ordered his own after. A hotel man in Kansas City taught his son in 1952 to put her name into the world before his own. The boy from Marion had studied the diner's menu beforehand, so he would know the prices cold and never steer her toward the cheap side of it. A man who invites, his father said, has decided he can afford it. She ordered the chicken. He had coffee and pie and said he had eaten already. The order was small. The deference in it was not. Number 17, he kept his hands to himself. He did not touch her without an invitation he could read plainly. No arm slung across the seat, no hand at the small of her back she had not welcomed. A pharmacist in Lincoln told his son in 1955 that a gentleman's hands stayed his own until a girl made room for them. A woman who was not pawed at felt something rare on a first date, safe. Restraint was respect a girl could feel in the 2 feet of open air a boy was careful to leave. Here is what nobody says out loud. A boy before 1965 was taught that on a date he gave first, and gave freely, the door, the coat, the standing, the whole evening planned, and expected nothing named in return. Then we taught a generation of young men that this was a con. Play it cool, give nothing first, make her prove she is worth the trouble before you spend a single courtesy on her. And she was taught the very same about him. So now 2 people sit across a little table, each waiting for the other to be warm first, each holding every kindness in reserve, and each drives home alone and calls it self-respect. The boy from Marion risked his dignity on a stranger before she had earned a thing and was repaid with 50 years. We call that risk foolish. We keep our coats on, and we wonder why a first date feels like 2 people guarding a border. Number 16, he never left her standing alone. At the dance, he did not drift off to the men by the punch bowl and leave her stranded at the wall. If he had to step away, he walked her back to someone first. A Union man in Flint taught his son in 1953 that you never abandoned your partner in a crowded room. The boy from Marion did not let go of her the whole night unless the band stopped. Presence was the gift. Standing her against a wall was the cheapest cruelty a boy could commit without a single word. Number 15, he treated the waiter like a person. He said please and thank you to the man who brought the food, and tipped him fairly when he thought no one was counting. A barber's son in Memphis learned in 1951 that a girl reads your true character in how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. Charm aimed at her was expected. Courtesy aimed at a stranger was proof. The boy from Marion over-tipped the diner waitress from $3 he could not spare, and his girl saw it and said nothing, and never forgot it. Number 14. He planned the whole evening. He did not ask her what she wanted to do. He decided the dance, the diner after, the drive home the long way, and he owned every part of it. A foreman in Akron told his son in 1953 that handing a girl the entire burden of the evening was not deference, it was cowardice dressed up as politeness. The boy from Marion had the night mapped to the minute before he ever knocked, down to which songs he hoped the band would play. A girl led by a boy who had thought it all through, felt cared for from the first turn of the key. Number 13, he praised the woman, not the face. Here is the one that contradicts every piece of advice a young man is handed today. He did not open on her looks. He told her she was quick or kind or brave in a way he had actually watched. A lawyer in Charleston told his son in 1956 that any fool could see a pretty face. Saying so proved only that a boy had eyes in his head. The boy from Marion told his girl he had watched her be gentle with a hard old customer at the 5 and dime and had thought about it all week. She had been called pretty 100 times and forgotten it. She was told she was kind exactly once and carried it for 30 years. Number 12, he walked her to the door. He did not say goodnight from the car. He walked her all the way up, waited until she was safely inside with the porch light on, and only then turned for home. A cabinet maker in Grand Rapids taught his son in 1949 that the leaving was the part she would remember, because it was the part he did not have to do. This was the boy from Marion's whole evening in one gesture: the borrowed Ford idling at the curb, the hat coming off on the top step, the handshake, the wait until the latch clicked behind her. A girl felt safe. A father at the window felt certain. The walk to the door was the sincere part. Number 11, he kept the hour he promised. If he told her father 10, she was home by 10, 5 of, if he could manage it. A ship fitter in Bridgeport taught his son in 1953 that a boy who keeps the small promise about the hour is handed the large ones without ever having to ask. The clock was never about the clock. It was a test of whether his word held when the night was going well, and no one would have blamed him for stretching it. The girl noticed, too, that a boy would cut a good evening short rather than break his word to her family. That was worth more than any long good night on the porch. Number 10. He called the next day. He did not leave her wondering. The next day he telephoned, or he wrote a short note, and he thanked her plainly for the evening. A postal clerk in Dubuque taught his son in 1952 that the follow-through was the courtship. Anyone could be charming for one night. The boy from Marion had no telephone in the house, so he walked to the drugstore and used the booth to call her the very next morning, and spent a nickel he needed on it gladly. One call, prompt and warm, made her sure the night had mattered to him too. Number 9. No lines, no game. He did not run a script or feed her flattery he had used on other girls. He said true things plainly and let them land or not. A pipe fitter in Youngstown told his son in 1955 that a line was a lie with a bow on it, and a girl worth having could smell one from across a table. A boy who told the truth was taking a real risk. She might not like the true thing, and she felt the difference between a rehearsed charm and a real one immediately. Honesty was slower. It was also the only thing that lasted past the second date. The game won the evening. The truth won the girl. Here is the part of his story we skipped. That first date in Marion was not smooth, and the boy was not a natural. He had asked her 3 times before she said yes. He had practiced the walk to the door in his own front hall the night before, feeling like a fool, because his father had told him the leaving was the part she would remember. When he pulled up to the dance, his hands were wet on the borrowed wheel. He did every single thing on this list, not because he was charming, but because he was terrified, and the rules were the only thing he had to hold on to. He took off his hat. He listened to her talk about her sister for 20 full minutes and asked a question that proved he had heard. He got her home 4 minutes early, and on that porch, when every other boy in Marion would have leaned in, he shook her hand instead, and she stood at the window, watched the borrowed Ford pull away, and told her mother quietly that she was going to marry that one. It was not luck. It was a handful of rules a poor man's father had handed down for free. And the one that decided it, the thing she named 50 years later at his funeral, is still coming. It is number 1. Number 8. Never a word about money. He paid without display and without complaint, and he never let her feel the cost, even when the cost was real. A dock worker's son in Baltimore learned in 1950 that a man who extends the invitation has decided he can afford it, and a man who groans over the check had no business extending it. The boy from Marion had $4 to his name and spent 3 of them that night, and she never once saw him flinch. A girl did not need the evening to be expensive, only given freely. The gift was ruined the moment its price was spoken. He never spoke it. Number 7, he gave her his whole attention. When she talked, he did not scan the hall for someone better or glance toward the door. His eyes stayed on her face for the length of the evening. A watchmaker in Lexington taught his son in 1949 that the greatest compliment a man owns is undivided attention, and the cheapest insult is the wandering kind. The boy from Marion could not have told you who else was at that dance, because he never once looked. He was either there with her or somewhere else pretending. Number 6, he offered his arm. Crossing the street, climbing the hall steps, over the icy patch in the lot, the arm was there before she reached for it. A bricklayer in Cleveland taught his son in 1952 to offer the arm and let her decide whether to take it. The boy from Marion held his out at the foot of the Odd Fellows' steps and felt his whole heart stop when she slid her hand through it. It was not a grab, and it was not a demand. It was an offer made openly that she was entirely free to refuse. The arm said, "Lean on me if you like." The choice stayed hers. Number 5, early or not at all. On time was late. He arrived before the hour every time and let her never once wait on him. A station master in Sacramento lived by the timetable in 1950 and raised his son to treat a date like a departing train. The boy from Marion sat in the borrowed Ford outside her house for 11 minutes because he had come too early and would rather have died than knock late. Lateness said his convenience came first. Earliness, quiet and unremarked upon, said hers did before the evening had even started. Number 4, he guarded her name. He did not brag about the date afterward, did not trade details with the other boys, did not let her become a story told at the pool hall. A brakeman in Roanoke told his son in 1953 that a girl's reputation was hers to spend, not his, and a boy who cheapened it had shown the whole town exactly the kind of man he was. The boy from Marion said nothing to anyone the next week, but that she was kind. The one who guarded her name when she was not there to hear it had made a silent promise. "Your dignity is safe with me." Kept. It was worth more than any night out. Number 3, he put her ease before his own. Before his own comfort, his own hunger, his own wish to sit down, he saw to hers first. The seat out of the draft, the water refilled, the coat, the door, the long way home, so she would not have to walk the dark block alone. A mill hand's son in Lowell learned in 1950 that you tend the other person before yourself daily, without applause and without being asked. This was the rule the boy from Marion's father had drilled into him above every other one, that a man is the one who goes without first. He gave up his jacket, his good $3, and the last dance he had wanted, and counted none of it. It was the rule beneath all the others. Number 2, his word to her was iron. What he told her he would do, he did. The call he promised, the hour he named, the second date he said he wanted. A tannery worker's son in Milwaukee learned in 1949 that a promise is cheapest the moment it is made, and dearest the moment it is kept. The boy from Marion told her on the porch that he would call Sunday, and he called Sunday, and he kept calling for the next 50 years. Trust was not built in the grand gesture. It was built by the boy who did the little thing he said he would, until doubting him never once occurred to her. Number 1, he listened to her and remembered. Not the way a boy listens while he waits for his turn to talk. He listened the way you listen when the other person is the only thing in the room. And then, and this was the whole of it, he remembered. 3 weeks after that first dance, he mentioned her sister by name and the trouble she had been having, and asked how it had turned out. A shop clerk's daughter in Terre Haute told her own son in 1951 that the whole secret of being loved was to notice one person fully when almost no one bothered to notice anyone at all. Before the borrowed car, before the hat, before the coat on the porch, the boy from Marion did this one thing. When she spoke, he stopped, and he kept what she said. Every other rule on this list was only this one wearing different clothes. The open door was listening with a hand. The remembered order was listening with a memory. 50 years later, at his funeral, his wife did not tell the room he had been handsome or clever or rich, because he had been none of those things. She told them that on the night they met, a poor boy in a borrowed car had listened to her like her words were worth keeping, and that no one, before or since, had ever made her feel so entirely seen. That is the thing no man would dare do today. Not the hat, not the door, this. None of these 25 things required money or looks or a single clever line. They required a boy raised in a house where somebody did them in front of him before he was old enough to know he was being taught. The generation that came up before 1965 understood something we have spent 50 years unlearning. That charm was never a performance and never a trick. It was built one repetition at a time. The hat lifted 1,000 times, the door opened until opening it was a reflex, a girl's words heard all the way to the last syllable. We called these things stiff, old-fashioned, the armor of men who could not simply be themselves. We traded them for being ourselves and called it freedom. And now a generation swipes through 1,000 faces and cannot understand why every table feels like a border to guard. The rules were never lost to time. They were set down on purpose by sons who thought they had outgrown them. That boy is still standing on the porch in Marion with his hat in his hand, waiting to teach any man willing to stand where he stood and mean it.